everyone, it's Margaret Manning here, and welcome to 60 and Me. This is the place where women over 60 come to be inspired. And my guest today is going to inspire us. Her name is Nancy Queen. Nancy is the owner of nobleknits.com, which is an online shop and knitting community. And she is passionate about sharing knitting with women around the world. And I'm so glad to have you here today. Thank you, Nancy.
Hi, Margaret. Thanks so much. It's great to be here with you today on 60 and Me.
Well, I honestly, as you can see, I've got all my little knitting things ready today because
It's beautiful.
Thank you. I'm a total beginner. This is my idea of like fancy knitting. But I wanted to mention before we get too far along, that in addition to having your shop called nobleknits.com, you also have 2 books. And I know they're fabulous books. And I'm just giving these out for people who might be interested in getting started. There's this is a great title, The Chicks with Sticks Guide to Knitting and The Chicks with Sticks Guide to Crochet.
Yes.
And check out Nancy's website because there's tons of resources. But today I would love to chat with you. We've talked already about how knitting can help with anxiety, stress, and also, just how beginners can get started, but in other videos. But what I'd love to share with you is, or you share with us, is your knitting for charity, knitting for good. Tell us a bit about some of the options that women have for that.
Well, not only does knitting for charity help others, but it helps you. I mean, there's a great sense of reward that comes from knitting for others and giving back to your community or to a greater cause. So it is rewarding. In fact, I was recently talking to a friend who has a little knitting club, and she said what they do in their knitting club is they just request that everybody knits one project for themselves and then alternates and knits a project for charity. So it's a great way to be mindful of knitting for others and just put it into your daily cycle of when you're knitting and who you're knitting for. And there are so many resources for people to knit for charity.
Right.
We actually have a link of about 20 different charities. One's called the Mother Bear Project, where you knit little stuffed animal bears for children. Another one is Project Linus, where you knit baby blankets. There's quite a few charities that knit for the troops. They knit helmet warmers, socks. I mean, the lists go on and on of people that could really use your knitting and would be rewarded from it.
Yeah. I actually, whenever I tweet an article on knitting, I always copy, there's Knit for Peace and Knit for AIDS. And they're very active on social media. And a lot of these groups do depend on social media, to be, for people to be aware of them. But they do great jobs. And I'm sure that there's probably a whole list. And like, for example, if hospices and community, like retirement homes where there are people who, maybe have some socks or they want some little mittens. Like, where's my mittens? These are my favorite mittens, by the way. I wear them all the time. I got them at a fair somewhere. But things like that are so easy to knit. But you could put those on in the daytime if your little hands were cold, and it's such a great gift.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know we mentioned all these larger charities, but there's so many charities that you could knit for. When they say charity begins at home, look locally. There are, contact, like you said, a local hospital, a church, a cancer center. There's so many places that would benefit from even women's shelters or any kind of shelter. There's people that are cold on the streets that would do wonders from a warm hat or, like you said, a pair of mittens. That you can knit for and feel very rewarded. Right. And a lot of times you can just a phone call, ask them what they need. If they have any stipulations, like do we need to use a wool or do we need to use an acrylic that's easy care?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So just find out what they need. But it's very rewarding to knit for others.
Yeah, and the thing is, no one's judging you. Like it's like if you take it in there and you skip to a stitch or something and it's not perfect. I mean, no one's judging. They're not going to say, "Oh, I don't want that glove." I mean, people are so appreciative of, and there's something about I don't know whether it's just primitive like our background, but giving textiles is something so nourishing, like and protective. Don't you think?
You are absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just like when you're way back in the cave days, like it's like you knitted and you gave warmth.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I think
It
is fun.
definitely brings you back to center,
Yeah.
with knitting and texture and um, helping somebody else
Yeah.
for a greater cause.
What about knitting in groups for charities? Do you do anything like that, or know of groups that do that?
I do know of quite a few groups. Like I said, this friend of mine who I was talking to about how to start your own knitting group
Yeah.
mentioned that that's what they do is they knit together. I think they meet once every 2 weeks and they knit together. And when they're sharing their projects, one project is always for themselves or who they're knitting it for, and then the other one is for charity.
It's such a great idea. I mean, that covers two things in one go, doesn't it? You get the social benefit of knitting with women. You can just chat and, get caught up on things. And at the same time, you're then at the end of it packing something up to give to someone. So it's very cool. Also, a lot of older women used to love knitting when they were young, and then they get arthritis and they can't knit. So just being able to give them something that's homemade, they're so used to having knitted all their lives.
You are absolutely right. Yes. It takes them back to a happy time in their lives and something that was really rewarding for them.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a hug.
It is a hug. It's a woolly hug. And actually, it's really funny because when I was a little kid, my mom was a great knitter. I mean, she was like the fingers just flew. And all of our little sweaters were made from her. I mean, she would knit sweaters and socks and the whole thing. And I think it's just something about being a mom that it just feels like natural to, want to do that for someone else. So
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's something that you can continue your whole life. It doesn't have to be for a child or your child. Knit for somebody, just knit for anybody, and they'll appreciate what you're doing.
Knit for love.
I also wanted to mention with knitting for charity, another way to give back is not only to knit for others, but to teach someone else how to knit. I know we had a women's shelter a few years back that someone was knitting all these Afghans, and then she went in and taught all the women how to knit. So now they've learned a new skill that they're going to have for the rest of their lives and be able to pass on to their children and grandchildren. And it's something that you don't have to be an advanced knitter to learn to teach someone how to cast on, knit every row, and bind off.
Easy for you. But I love the shawl that you're wearing. Tell me about it.
Thank you. This is a free pattern on our website. It's a one skein shawl, and
it's beautiful.
It's a tweed yarn, and the color changes as you knit. So, and this is all knit stitch. So it is not an advanced project at all.
Now, is that a sparkle that I'm seeing, or is it just a different color?
There's a white fleck in it. It's almost like tweed, but the tweed is a white fleck. So
it's lovely. And you were saying earlier that you've got if you watch the rest of our videos, we're doing several of them today. You'll see Nancy in a different knitted product every time, and you've got the patterns you said on your site. They're free.
Every single one of the patterns that I've garments that I've worn today is a free pattern on our blog.
Well,
and I'll provide the links for you.
Okay, that's super. Okay, I think we've covered that one really, really well. And I hope we've inspired people to do this.
I hope so.
And to share the love, the knitting love.
Thanks so much for having me at 60andMe, Margaret.
Thank you, Nancy, for being here. It's my pleasure. We'll talk again. Thanks. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our 60andMe YouTube channel and also visit our website. We are a strong and dynamic community of women over 60. We're challenging aging stereotypes, and every day we share fascinating stories, interesting questions, and great conversation.